In this detailed video, we are going to elaborate a little bit more on using exercise to connect your foot to your pelvis function and why it's important. So we covered with duck walking that you are in a position of external rotation at the foot and at the hip. So usually what's happening at the foot will dictate and show us what was happening at the level of the hip and the pelvis as well. Now, an externally rotated pelvis has the front of the pelvic floor descended and lengthened, like the springs on your trampoline are stretched out. And what that really means for your pelvic floor function is that pelvic floor is not going to lower and lift with breath and movement like it should. And being able to lift or ascend in the front is going to help us with shock absorption in movement. So if you struggle with prolapse and stress incontinence, you can see how constantly having that pelvic floor unable to respond and lift can be exacerbating or contributing to ongoing symptoms. We apply this to functional movement like walking and running. You can see how it can be even more problematic to not find the necessary shock absorption through hip internal rotation. Now, it's not about just what's happening at the hip though. We need to connect the foot to the hip. And so I'm going to show you exactly the things you need to focus on in this split squat. Now, before we get into it, we're going to have a little emphasis in this split squat more on hinging, and that is going to be to open the posterior pelvic floor and the glutes. If you're in a constant state of external rotation, you're going to hold a lot of tension here. So with this split squat, some things I want you to key into is your foot placement first. We're going to set up from the ground up. So if we look at our foot, we want to focus on our foot contact at the base of our big toe and the inner edge of our heel. So setting up from there, you want to make sure you feel those foot contacts. Now we're not losing the outer edge of our foot either. So we're finding all three, but we're going to bias more emphasis to the base of the big toe and the inner edge of our arch. Now, our shin angle is going to be directly over the ankle, so we're not going to be forward. And what this correlates to is mid-stance of gait or walking. And that is a position that puts the foot into pronation, and pronation connects to internal rotation up the leg, at the tibia and the femur, and ultimately at the hip, which means we can ascend our pelvic floor and respond to shock. So inner edge of the foot contacts, we're gonna have our knee and our tibia right in line with our ankle, so we're not gonna be forward and we're not gonna be back. Make sure you're set up there. That's how you're gonna bear weight through the middle of that foot. Now in this example, we're not gonna be completely upright for our split squat. We are gonna hinge forward at the hips. So as you do so, the hip comes back, the position of the knee and the tibia does not change. So we're not coming back here. So what we're doing is we're getting length through the hip. We're gonna open through the posterior pelvic floor that is gonna be more prone to holding tension. And you're simply going to lower down on an inhale, exhale, drive up through those foot contacts. I also want you to pay attention to what's happening at the leg in the back. I want you to be up high on the ball of that foot. Pay attention to your ankle as well if it is wobbling in or out. You really want to stay nice and stacked with that foot in line, and we are simply lowering, hinge in on your inhale, exhale as you come up. So I'm going to grab a weight and I want to show you how you would do it to add a little bit more challenge. And I'm going to turn and show you so you can see this inner part here. So on my right leg, I'm thinking about base of big toe, inner edge of the heel. My shin is in line with my knee. Now I'm gonna be a little hingier. As I send my chest forward, I'm still gonna keep my knee over my ankle as my bottom goes back. So it's inhale down, exhale up, pushing through those inner edge of your feet as you lower and lift. Now, if you want to challenge a little bit more of that hinge and make even more space in the back of your pelvic floor, you are going to add an internal rotation bias. Everything with the setup stays the same. As we lower down, we're going to slightly rotate toward that leading leg and come on up. As we rotate, we're still keeping our inner edge contact, and we're getting even more length through the back of the glute. Exhale as you come up. I'm going to show you one more option that you can use, and that is going to be another advanced option with a band. So the band is going to be anchored to something sturdy, and then you're gonna place that band at the inner edge of the leading leg, just at the level of above the knee. Now you're gonna find the same setup, but what this band is gonna do is it's gonna try to pull us toward the wall. And we're gonna have to actively create that contraction to pull in. And when we do that, we're just gonna be able to continue to emphasize and create some overload into that internal rotation. So from there, you can simply lower and lift. Everything stays the same. We've just added a little bit more challenge. You can also do that internal rotation emphasis with the band and a weight as well. So much more than just your basic split squat. Focus on those cues of alignment and foot contact to really connect up the kinetic chain and ultimately better impact your pelvic floor.